Morning YouTube, Koenigs Rax here again with a quick and belated VR to Posthuman Piper's 100 subs 100 years contest. I think this is the third contest I've joined in, because I only tend to join in these when the subject matter is, I don't know, attractive is probably not the right word, but interesting is probably the right word. And the possibility of considering what the future might hold for me is future for me. I'm not going to be here in 100 years. The future might hold for me is an interesting topic. God, I sincerely hope I'm not here in 100 years. Still, the pace of scientific advancement is such that they might find some way of keeping old farts alive for as long as they want. No, not for me. I shall back out of that one. Hide under a rock somewhere until I die quietly. So, 100 years from now. Posthuman Piper asked if we were optimists or pessimists. And my vision of the future will appear pessimistic, but in truth it's quite optimistic, because I think optimism will come from the pessimism. Let me explain that. My vision is restricted to those parts of the world and societal world that I understand, which is the West, effectively. UK, Europe. Could I understand America? America's too diverse to be understood easily, but as a combined blurb, you can get the drift. I'm still smoking some GQ Classic English in my little BBB. I believe that as our population continues to grow, so will social disharmony. And I believe that's because the governmental systems that we have in place are fundamentally flawed. I think we've come a long way from the time when politicians and governments took power, took office to serve the community. These days it's a career structure, and I think that's a fundamental problem, because people study to be politicians, people train to be politicians, and it's a career path to success. I've got no objection to anyone being successful, but I think recent history shows that the gap between those with and those without is growing faster than ever. And at the very extremes of those withs and withouts, you've got obscene wealth at some ends and pitiful poverty at the other. And regrettably, because money is such a big part of our society, that poverty is compounded, because there's very little in this world that you can do without money. So I think we will have three distinct classes again. That which we have been fighting to come away from for hundreds of years will come back. In that I believe we will have the rich, the poor, and those in the middle struggling to stay where they are. Whenever you get disaffected people in society, you end up with conflict. You end up with people forming bands, tribes, and then you end up with tribes fighting amongst themselves. So my vision is for a fractious group at the bottom of the pile, a frightened group in the middle of the pile, probably living in secure compounds and gated communities wherever possible, and then the supposed world leaders and the very wealthy at the very top who don't really care about the rest of us. And I think our society will struggle. I think we will find greater involvement from the state in our lives. I think we will find more brutal regimes appearing. I doubt very much that any form of smoking will be legal. Because that's money wasted that could go to enhance the lives of the wealthy. By money wasted I mean health money, the healthcare money. I think certainly in the UK the state is determined to force its vision of healthiness upon us. Since the smoking ban came into force, there has been more and more calls for legislation against drink and anything else, realistically. We've got greater levels of state intervention in all of our freedoms. And I think that's primarily to control the fractures that the powers that be can see appearing. They use all kinds of excuses. Some of those are real, some of those are imagined. There is a terrorist problem, partly because of the state of the fracturing that we've started seeing elsewhere in the world, and I think that will spread. Not necessarily around religious grounds, although that's a perfectly good excuse. But it is only an excuse to my mind. And I believe that that will continue to worsen over the next 30 to 40 years. At some point, there will be another version of the Arab Spring. But this one will rifle its way through what we consider to be the Western civilized world. And I think our current democratic structures will be torn down. Initially, that will cause greater chaos and greater hardship for all. But you've got to hope that after we've torn it all down, those that survive will be strong enough to put together a society which is more inclusive and more realistic, and maybe focusing more on people rather than money. There is a song that was popular in the UK many years ago. Well, it wasn't that popular, but it's called Tub Thumper by Chumbawamba. Yeah, does that sound like the kind of thing that Copernicus Rex listens to? Well, yes it is. But the opening lines are spoken in a northern British accent. And they go something like, I thought it mattered. I thought the music mattered. But does it bollocks? Not like people matter. And to my mind, if you replace the word music with money, that's what I see. People suddenly realising that the false god that is money and the power and influence that brings will eventually be replaced by something better. At least that's my hope for society, because otherwise we're going to be looking at a very dismal path. So yeah, I think that we will have a struggle. I think my son will see more of that struggle. His children and those that come after will see it still further. But at some stage, society will mend itself by reappraising values, removing obstacles, and maybe even imprisoning the wealthy. And by imprisoning, I don't mean sticking them behind bars, because I can't see that being beneficial either, but maybe popping them off to some small uninhabited island somewhere so that they can learn the values of working together and maybe even getting their hands dirty sometimes. I hope above hope that our world leaders, either current or future, can realise the mistakes they're making and not make the same mistakes when society is due to be rebuilt. And I hope that personal freedoms are respected longer term. So, in summary, I see the immediate future reasonably bleakly. Well, no, I don't actually. I see my immediate future quite brightly. I think I'll be gone before the problems really start hitting home. But I see the societal future quite bleakly for a period before someone comes along with a big scrubbing brush and a bucket and washes away the rubbish and we start again. That would be quite exciting. And maybe if reincarnation occurs, maybe that's the time to come back, see the struggle, take part, help the rebuild. And then a few hundred years from then, we'll probably have found another problem and we might have to take it all down and start again. Human history is such that we do that from time to time. We build for hundreds of years sometimes. Rip it apart and rebuild it. Maybe the true structure should be Lego. If we build everything in Lego, we can take it apart and rebuild it in the shape we want it. Wouldn't that be nice? So I hope I haven't depressed anybody, because I'm still quite cheerful. And I hope that whether this entry is early enough to get into the contest is neither here nor there, but I hope the contribution makes people think a little about true values and their position in the world. We all have a responsibility, and it's up to us to take it. Thank you. If you want to throw stones, throw them. Stay happy, people.